we just want to give you an opportunity to submit any other ideas that you may have for the Q&A. So some of the participants, I don't know if they're all present at the moment, but you wanted some general information during the session, so we're quite keen to understand if there's anything specific that you'd like to see, and just let us know either in the chat, again, like Nikita said, or come off the microphone and chat to us and let us know. If you think of anything throughout the session, feel free to just pop it in the chat. We're keeping an eye on the chat messages as they come in, so we'll see that and we can pause to discuss any questions that you might have. So Sarah, you've said you'd be interested to hear about how others use Footfall and some advice about the automatic responses that are sent to patients and how they can be changed.
That's no problem. We can have a look at that later on in the session. Thank you for letting us know, Sarah. As they come through, what we'll do is we'll add them on to the end of the session and we'll go through it then. But to start off with, let's get on with some of the topics we've already had submitted.
Okay, so we've had somebody ask, how can we manage forms more efficiently? So this was suggested from somebody at Manchester Medical. So really, if anyone has any kind of feedback on this topic, you know, feel free to use the hands up feature to let us know if you have anything that you'd like to kind of say. Let us know your opinion on it, about how you and your practice manage forms more efficiently. If you've got any advice or practices that you'd like to share, that anyone else can have a go with. So we haven't had any messages come in. So I guess we'll just me and Nikita, if we just have a chat about what we've kind of experienced from other practices in the past, about what the best practices that we've had from our experience. Generally, what we suggest is when it comes to managing forms on the dashboard, on the latest version of the dashboard, most practices will use the KPIs. So if you have seen the KPIs, you'll know that they are settings on the dashboard where you can set up alerts for each request at different stages of where it is being dealt with. So it enables you in the practice and your staff members to kind of think about what are the most popular forms, what are the most urgent forms, the ones that you want to make sure that you're dealing with efficiently. And the KPIs, you can set those up to help you to make sure that they get dealt with in the appropriate timeframes. So KPIs are a really good option for that. Most practices use those quite regularly.
Another suggestion that we always pass on is a use of a triage team. So depending on the size of your practice, it may work for you or may not. But if you do have the facilities to kind of set up your own triage team, it can really help move things along. So this could just be your receptionist or kind of the first port of call in your practice, and have them sign into the dashboard or have it running in the background. And as they come in, to triage it out to different members of staff. This could be, as I said, on the newest version of the dashboard, it could be a user group instead of an individual user. And that way, for let's say a get help form can be assigned to a doctor's group, and then whichever doctor is free first can then go in and deal with that request, and that can help the process move along a lot quicker.
Yeah, and the other thing as well is patient form control. We did have a previous webinar session about this topic where we went quite in depth about how the patient form control works. So we do have a separate video recording about that, which we'll send a link to, so that you can have a look at that. But patient form control is an additional feature that is on, it should be on all of your websites, where you can actually go in and schedule forms to be switched off at certain times. So you can either have it as a recurring schedule or a one-off thing. So if you are starting to become overwhelmed with requests, or you want to switch forms off at the end of the working day or over the weekend or the bank holiday, for example, you can do that. So it enables you to set up schedules for specific dates and specific times so that patients can't submit forms when you're not open or when you're getting quite busy and you're not able to deal with everything as quickly as you'd like.
Okay.
Great. So the next question we've got is around full triage using Footfall. So we had this question. Does anyone have any ideas about how they use, if you do, how you use full triage using footfall in your practice. Has anyone got any experience of doing that on their dashboards at all? So again, do feel free to use the chat feature or unmute the microphone and let us know.
It's Sarah. We use full triage, so everything goes through footfall for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so how do you find that? How is it in terms of how you manage it? Does it help you, or how does it help you?
Yeah, well, I think it's making the workload at the moment manageable when it probably wouldn't be manageable, because at least you can direct stuff elsewhere, so either back out to community pharmacists or to other services that are available that patients might not otherwise think of. Mm. I mean, it's still busy, but it's, yeah, I mean, we find it a godsend.
Mm.
That's really lovely to hear, Sarah.
Amazing. So has anyone else got any experience with using Total Triage, or any any questions for Sarah specifically? If you're happy to, like, if anyone wants to ask anything of Sarah about how she uses it in her practice, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer that as well.
Yeah, could I ask a question? Sorry.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, we're really interested in looking at everything going through footfall, because we find that a lot of appointments are kind of wasted because they don't necessarily need to be telephone appointments. It could have been dealt with online, or the relatively simple things that could have been fixed. And I think our receptionists are struggling to care navigate, really, because a lot of the care navigation isn't accessible enough in our experience, apart from obviously the pharmacy. But one of our concerns was kind of opening the floodgates a little bit, and how you can control that, because obviously there has to be a limit somewhere as to how much we can safely process in a day, and how you allocate, like how do you allocate the triaging of these forms? I mean, we were thinking of having one doctor who is basically triaging all the footfall forms, and everything goes through footfall, and then asking reception to book the relevant appointments. I'm just struggling to we're just getting our heads around the completely different way of working and how that would work.
Yeah, so we did suggest before some of the things that you can do to help with managing, if you're worried about having an influx of forms coming in or requests coming in. You can use things like the KPIs or the patient form control, where you can actually control the flow of forms coming in at different times of the day, which can help massively. So Sarah, did you have any kind of advice that you could give to Esther at all?
Yeah, I think it does open the floodgates a little bit, because obviously, instead of not being able to get through on the phone, they can always get through. So you do have people who send something in who say something like, I've got a rash and I've had it for an hour. But what we find really helpful is kind of pushing back. So we almost, well, not almost ever, but we quite often ask for more information. So any kind of skin rash, there's always a request for a photograph. And if we think something's ridiculous, we'll make them wait like the full 4 hours before we respond, and then we'll book an appointment for them in like 3 weeks' time, so that they're not getting some kind of amazing service. I mean, it's still an amazing service, but it's not, it's not quite so instantaneous. We don't use a doctor to triage everything, so we just use senior admin team. But then what we've ended up doing is having the duty doc is kind of there to help out with either the forms where the admin team feel it's just so ridiculous a request that really the answer should be no, but they don't want to make that clinical decision, so they go to the duty doc. Or if it's we haven't got many appointments left, and how quickly does this need to be seen type question, they go to duty doc. Okay. But the majority of it is done by the admin team. But we've found it really helpful, but it does open the floodgates a little bit. And Monday mornings and yesterday after bank holidays, we don't switch forms off. I actually wanted to, but the partners felt that one of the kind of benefits of this system was that we were you know, you as a patient could put your form in at any time over the weekend, so they didn't want to do it. So I would try and encourage your powers that be to do that.
Yeah,
because I think switching off is a good idea.
I'm conscious I don't want to dominate it with my questions, but when you say that triage, that admin team triage it, do they make that decision whether it's a phone call or a face-to-face or something that can be dealt with online, or do they just triage it to a doctor to? No,
they'll make a decision. So we've ended up, so we started with Footfall back in September, and we started off having a doctor kind of looking at most stuff with a member of the admin team, so that they would kind of get a bit better of an understanding. And then we've actually moved from there to a spreadsheet of pretty much every common presenting feature that a patient could come up with, and what the doctors feel is appropriate, you know, for that. So classically, you know, I don't know, lots of minor illness stuff, and you know that you've got to book it in that day or the next day with whoever. So it gets rid of a huge amount, because actually a huge number of stuff is kind of the same presenting complaints. And then stuff that isn't, you either err on the side of caution and book it in, or if you haven't got any appointments left, then you send it to a clinician to make that decision for you.
Okay. Sorry, just one more quick question. How do you handle patients that you've asked to come in? So like if you've asked them to contact you about test results, or you've asked them to arrange a follow-up. So we moved from a system where we had mostly book on the day appointments. This is pre-Footfall. To one where now we can kind of book anything whenever. So if a doctor wants to follow up, they'll book them in themselves. Yeah. If you've got somebody who's got test results, and we encourage them as well to either look online and do it that way, or if they want to submit a form onto Footfall, they can, and then we'll respond back and say it's normal, or it's satisfactory, but the doctor wants to speak to you within a month, and then we kind of say, do you want us to book that in for you? And we find it's much easier to control. You know, if a doctor's written abnormal result but needs a phone call within a month, then it's much easier on Footfall to just say, I've booked you an appointment in 2-3 weeks time, and that's the end of it. Whereas if you've got a receptionist trying to deal with that on the telephone, and the patient's going, well, no, that's not acceptable. So that's a benefit. You kind of take away a little bit of that personalisation. Okay, so you action the blood result as in, I want to see this person, and then they contact you via Footfall to arrange that, I guess, then. Yeah. Okay. Thanks, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I think, Sarah, you've hit the nail on the head there with asking them to go through the website for test results and things like that, because it is an easier and quicker way of doing it. Another thing that may help in that first kind of influx of forms is setting up a lot of quick responses. So with your admin team, like Sarah does, if you have an admin team dealing with it, you can actually set up quick responses for certain things that commonly come up all the time. And that way it's very quick for your admin team to click on the quick response button, know that it's for a test result or a rash, and you can send back, can you ask a picture? Can you send a picture? And then it's nice and quick, and it's a lot of back and forth kind of done, and it's a lot easier for your admin team to understand. Sarah, I can see your question, any way of making them into alphabetical order. We will pass that on to our development team and put it on our feature request board, and we'll get back to you if that does come, but it is a very good idea and we'll pass it on for you. Right, so should we move on to the next one?
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. That was really, really fantastic, guys. So we have here a case study which just kind of explains the benefits of total triage. So for those of you who are thinking about using it, like yourself, Esther, Nikita's come up with these stats from a surgery that she's dealt with in the past. So Nikita, if you want to take over and explain.
Perfect. here's a case study from one of our practices who've been using Footfall with the total triage method. Fakenham Medical Practice has a list size of approximately 15,000 patients, and by using the total triage method, they saw a reduction of 82% in patients who failed to turn up for appointments. So that's things that don't need to be wasted, especially at the moment. GP time is very precious, and we all know it's quite difficult to get an appointment, and there's people that still just don't turn up. Waiting time for appointments dropped from 4 weeks to either same day or within 72 hours. And the majority of patients who have been seen by the most appropriate clinician, as we do know that a lot of people will want to see a GP or doctor, but it may be more appropriate that they just see a nurse or a community pharmacist. So it saves GPs time that way as well. And they also experienced reduced waiting times on the phone as more people were using the website, as well as a greater amount of routine queries dealt with without the need for patients to visit the surgery. A lot of practices, and I believe Fakenham was one of them, that also does put a message on their telephones to say, obviously when they're waiting on the phone, that they can actually do it online as well. So it's one of those things to try and educate the patients that there is another way of going through it. Does anybody have any questions about this case study, or would you like us to move on? I think.
Yeah, thanks for that, Nikita.
Okay.
So the next question that we have is from Ruth at Woodley Surgery. How can the website help with quaff targets? So again, Nikita, if you want to field this one, because you're the sort of expert on this section.
So Ruth, I can see you actually with us today. Was there anything you'd like to add to this question before I go ahead and answer it for you? No? Okay, so yeah, with quaff at the moment, there may be a few things that can be added to your forms to help you secure quaff funding, and we have been made aware of this, and it is something that we are currently working on. So at the moment, we are in the process of building quaff forms to help secure that funding and to make it easier for you guys to get that. So we are hoping for them to come soon. It is something that's in the process, and hopefully will help you guys in the near future. But if you do have any questions, do not hesitate to ask your editor about them, and we will be sending things out once things are ready.
Great, and as well, if just to add to that, if anyone currently has any feedback about how they use Footfall to help towards their quaff requirements, do let us know as well. If you have any kind of experience with that, or any opinion you want to put into the chat or anything, let us know.
We use it for asthma reviews. We did our own form. Well, you guys did it well. We designed our own form, and you guys made it Footfall pretty for us, and it works quite well. You know, you can link videos on there, and the issue is it does take quite a long time coding it from Footfall to EMIS, which that kind of cuts down on some of the benefits. Just purely for the time it takes to code from one to the other. So I think there's a lot of scope to use Footfall in that way. For the reviews, there's a lot of other products that kind of do a similar thing, but none of them, as far as I'm aware, integrate with EMIS yet. And I think that Footfall is really good could be really good for that, for using those remote review forms, so that you don't have another product with another thing to look at. And yeah, I think that EMIS integration will be so helpful with that.
Yeah, so that is something with the quaff forms that we are hoping to have in them as well, is to have them coded. It is again something that's in production at the moment and in development, so hopefully that will be a part of it too, to make it easier and quicker for you, and as well as the EMIS integration that we are also working on. So hold tight, hopefully things will be working out sooner rather than later, but later on this year we should have something that will be able to help you guys out a lot more.
Yeah. I've just seen Abby in the chat has responded to say there aren't any fixed dates as it's a complete upgrade of the dashboard, but we're hoping it will be available to existing practices in June. So it gives you something to look forward to, kind of when we're thinking about it. But We don't have a guaranteed date at the moment, I'm afraid. But like Abby said, when it's available, your editors will let you know, so you won't be, as soon as we know, you'll know.
Perfect. So these next questions have come in, so we'll go through them one by one. So first is maintaining control of access and ensuring safety and not getting overwhelmed. So as we mentioned earlier, the patient form control dashboard is a really good way of doing this. At the end of the session, Esther, we will actually pop in the links to the videos and the other webinar. Is it something that you guys are using at the moment or have got access to on your site?
Yeah, it is something we use at the moment. I think when I was thinking about those questions, we were thinking along the lines of having a doctor triage all the clinical requests, like our admin fish out, all the admin related stuff, but they tend to forward on the clinical stuff to a GP. And at the moment it's built into our appointment book, so we have slots for footfall requests, but we think that we can use it to improve our access, because you can triage and process so many more footfall requests in the same amount of time as you can do 5 phone calls or whatever. But what I was worried about is having lists of hundreds and hundreds of footfalls to triage a day, and whether people turn it off. I mean, because I guess it's a balance between not turning it off too quickly and making it
inaccessible,
defeating the object, but also maintaining safety. So I think we were thinking of having our forms on like 8 till 4, to be able to triage and process those, not necessarily see all those people on that day, but at least make a decision about how long they can wait to maintain safety. But anyway, I
think it's something that you could play around with different times of the day. It could be that you try for a week at lunchtime, just kind of like the phones would be off, so you could try it that way, or like you said, a bit earlier in the day, turning them off so that the doctors have a bit of time to go back to the voice before they finish for the day, that kind of thing. But yeah, you're exactly bang on the money with that. How do you manage with different GPs' digital literacy? So with this, do you mean like how much they are comfortable with footfall and kind of IT in that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, because I think what we found is I'm quite happy to send a reply and wait for the patient to come back to me. I kind of have a view of, well, I mean, what's the difference between me saying this on the phone and writing it in a message? And I think some of us are more comfortable with this. It is a new way of working, whereas other people tend to ring every footfall, or they'll reply and ask them to book an appointment, and I think struggle to get their heads around using it as a tool. Does that make sense? And I just wondered if any other practices had experienced that, and if there was any learning points or tips that they'd come up with.
Well, yeah, if anybody else here has any tips for people in this situation, if you've dealt with it, please feel free to come off mute and have a chat with us.
The only thing we've done that may or may not be helpful is instead now of ever booking an appointment on the telephone with a patient, every single person who's getting an appointment but isn't getting a face-to-face gets the same response, which is that it's been clinically assessed and it's been assigned to Dr. X, who will be in contact either by video, phone or online message. And we find that actually even putting that in the reply, when the doctor then sees that they've got that, it kind of reminds them that there is an option here just to respond, by typing rather than picking the phone up.
Okay, because we were looking to kind of almost use it as a way of, making that, perhaps wrongly making that decision for other GPs. So, right, this needs a telephone appointment. this. Do you know what I mean? But that might not be the way to go by the sounds of it.
Yeah, if I can just jump in, from my experience with training other practices, I've not heard of using a method where the admin or the people triaging things via the dashboard decide what the clinician does with it after. But it might be worth trying it out and seeing if that does work, because it might be that it works for you because everyone uses it differently. So, you know, you could try it again and see if that helps you. And then if it does, then you can continue to use that. And if not, then you can always go back to using, you know, letting the clinician kind of decide how they do it.
Yeah, it sounds like it's like trial and error, I guess. Yeah.
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
So how do you efficiently prioritize requests? So from my experience, there are certain forms that people click as high priority. So these could be the get help forms or the ask forms. Those are the forms that most people will see as high priority. And they're the ones that they will have the shorter KPI on. So they'll have maybe a couple of hours instead of a couple of days, and then they can actually put things kind of that don't need almost immediate attention or same day attention to having maybe a day or more hours. And that's how they kind of go through the list, as the dashboard will then prioritize it by breach time for you. So that's one way that I know that people do it. Again, if anybody else here has any other ways that they feel like they efficiently prioritize requests, then please go ahead. Also the use of the urgent button, so the important urgent button. If there's a child, or if, say, the admin team, when they are triaging, see that there is a child or elderly person or someone that may need more kind of immediate care, but that isn't urgent per se, they can click it as important, and then that one can be seen first. But again, that does need the need of someone looking at the request before they make that decision. Shall we move on to the next one? So do you use a mix of routine and on-the-day appointments, or do you clear it all every day? I think this is definitely practice preference. I've heard that some people do have a mix, and they kind of have allotted slots for footfall and for normal on the day or routine appointments. And then there are other people that literally deal with them on the day as they go through. It just seems to be whatever works for your practice. I think, Sarah, you mentioned that you have slots for certain things, and that's how you kind of work out what is on the day and in the future and that kind of thing. But really, it's just, again, another trial and error, I think.
Yeah, I was just wondering what other practices who do total triage do, really. I think, yeah, like you say, it's trial and error. Yeah.
I do know that one of our larger practices, they do put it into slots. So they say they have, okay, like theoretically they could have 20 slots for on the day across all their different GPs, and once they're all gone, then they move on to tomorrow's slots, and then they also have kind of any routine that can be booked every 3 or 4 weeks, and that's how they deal with it. But there are normally, I think it's smaller practices that try and get through all of them during the day, but list size and things, obviously situations differ. But if anybody else here wants to pop anything in the chat or anything that could help, please do. Okay, and then I think we may have answered this one before, about how do you handle patients who have been asked to contact the practice. One of the things I know that total triage practices do normally is that if they've been asked to contact the practice, the patient normally calls. They don't go online. They tend to call because they feel like it's the best way to contact the practice. And one way that some practices deal with this is that when they get the phone call, is that the administrator will then go onto the dashboard and fill out a patient form. So using the patient form section is a good way of, although someone has called, it's still going through the one system, and it's still be triaged out like any other request. And they can just use the normal contact the practice form as they would, or again, the administrator can decide which form is best for their query.
We were thinking of perhaps asking for a separate form, so like I've been asked to contact the practice form, and then you could have a drop down about whether it's about a test result or follow up, or because I'm thinking what I was thinking along the lines of that is that if we've got, you know, like 200 requests coming in a day, that will help you know that that is probably what you need to look at last. But that's when we were thinking of, you know, a doctor doing it all, which we might need to rethink.
Yeah, so again, you can play around with different forms and see what works. So if your editor could create a form for you that would work for that, and again, it can just be one that, you know, just goes to the bottom of the list at the end of the day. Yeah. Okay, has anybody else got any other questions or best practices that they'd like to share? Or we can move on. Okay, we'll move on.
Thanks for that, Peter. So we're going to move on to the next question, which is if it's possible to bulk file recently closed messages into patient records on Vision. So not a lot of our practices use Vision. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to forward this question to my colleague Abby, who has more knowledge about this part of the dashboard. So Abby, if you want to take over and give us your feedback.
Abby, you're muted.
Rookie mistake. Hi there. Yeah, just saying, yeah, so I'm Abby. I am the product owner for Footfall. So a lot of the feature requests come into me. So that's why Holly sent this one on to me, because a lot of them are actually feature requests. So we're going to go through them sort of one by one. So the bulk file recently closed messages to patient records. We actually currently don't, we can't bulk upload anything to the clinical system. We can do them individually, but not on bulk at the moment. It's something that we are investigating as we are doing the integration. With Vision, we are currently not able to bulk send anything through. We do have the ability via Vision for you to send it via DocMan. Do you use DocMan, or do you have access to DocMan at all? Yes. What I can do is I can get your editor to send you a message to get your test patient details, and then we can set something up for you. So at the moment, we obviously can't send them through directly, but we can send them through via DocMan. So it'll save you having to copy and paste it every single time, to just quicken up that process for you. Perfect. Recently closed list, not long enough. Completely agree. This is something that's been fed back to us a few times, and as I suggested before, we've actually in the middle of overhauling our dashboard completely. This has been taken on by feedback that we've received over the last couple of months, and the recently closed list is an issue on there. We're now allowing you to view all of your closed lists, and it will show you 30 items per page, and then you can navigate through the pages. You're also able to filter it down via request type and also who's closed that request. So just allows you to basically drill down between that closed list, try and find the information that you're looking for. Sort by date, not currently, but I can look into that, because we are looking at sorting the list, because that's also been something we've been asked for as well, to be able to sort not only the closed list, but also be able to sort any list that's on your dashboard at the time, whether that be by date or breach time, etc. So that's something that we're definitely looking at. Also, I think the last one was oh, I think I missed one. Oh, going back to the list. So it does not go back to the list once you've done, so you have to refresh. This is something that we get all the time. So this is something that in the next dashboard it will be. So if you are looking at your parked list or your wait list, and then you open a request in that list, once you exit or do anything on that episode, it will go back to the current list you are working on. I know currently it goes back to the work list, and then you have to go to the new list again. So in the new dashboard, it will make sure that whatever list you are open and working in, when you've finished any work on that episode, it will definitely go back to the list that you are working on, just saving you some clicks. So I think that's all of them. I think I already answered your messaging patients. So yeah, at the moment there's no way to message patients without them having to send a message first, but it is something that we're looking at initially, to send a message to a patient individually, and then with the view that we'll be able to send them bulk messages for things like reviews, for quaff points, etc. So that's something that we're definitely looking at.
Thank you, Abby.
You're more than welcome.
Thanks, Abby. So now that we've gone through most of the questions that were submitted by the feedback for this session, we just want to take an opportunity for anyone to share anything that they'd like to discuss as a result of those questions we've looked at, any other questions anyone wants to bring up, or anything else that you can think of. So some of the people that were joining us today wanted to share their ideas about how they use footfall specifically. So if you're one of those people, feel free to unmute and let us know, or pop a message in the chat.
Also, in the meantime, at the start of the session, Sarah, you mentioned about the automatic responses that are sent to patients. So if you guys are happy to, we can actually show a demo of how you can do this, depending on your dashboard. If you are happy to do that, give me a thumbs up and I'll go through that with you now. But the automatic responses can be set per form. So I'll give it a couple minutes. If everyone's happy to go into a demo, pop a thumbs up and I will pass it on. But otherwise, with the automatic responses, you can set them up per form. Oh, here we go. Okay. What I'll do is I will share my screen for a minute and we will go through the automatic responses and how we set them up and change them. So in the meantime, just while I get onto the dashboard, if anybody has any questions, do continue to pop them in the chat and we will get onto them afterwards.
Yep, so I'll be here to look at the chat messages as well, or if anyone wants to ask me anything while I'm here, just let me know.
Once you're on the dashboard, it may look something like this, or you may have a different version of the dashboard, but the basis is still the same and you will still be able to do this feature. So once you're on the dashboard, this is our version 5, you can go to form options, or on the older version of the dashboard, it might be under just acknowledgement emails on the side panel, and then we can click into any form. So for example, we will click into the Get Help form. And then we have tabs up here. Again, on older versions of the dashboard, it may look a little bit different, but the wording is still the same. And we can click into acknowledgement emails. So at the moment, we have this one set up for the Get Help form. So with the acknowledgement emails, they are automatically sent to the patient once the form is submitted. So this isn't something that you need to send as you go into the dashboard. So the patient will have already received this by the time that you go back to respond. This is where you can put in any information that you feel like they need to know up front. So this could be expectations. So for this site, we aim to respond between 1 or 2 working hours, and it may be slower to respond between 12 and 3 because doctors are in meetings or on lunch and that kind of thing. It then has a bit of COVID-19 information and to visit the NHS 111 website or 119 website. Here you can pop in anything that you feel is necessary to the form. So it could be for a travel form that you could pop in something about needing to submit or make follow-up appointments for the travel service, or it could be anything to do with an asthma review. It could say that please be aware that you may be asked into the practice if the doctor feels it's necessary, or anything like that they may need to know up front. You can edit it to say whatever you like, but it's good to make sure that it isn't kind of patient specific and it is just a generic thing that can go to any patient if they submit the form. But it does make it feel a little bit more personalised, because by using these brackets, it will fill in their name and the practice name for you. So by putting capital patient in the square brackets, it will fill in the name. So we'll say John Smith. When John Smith sees this, he'll see Dear John Smith, and so on and so on. And the practice at the bottom will say your practice name. And that is the best way to kind of set them up. But again, you can set them up per each request. Sometimes normally when you're in preview, as they do transfer over, it's best to kind of go through then. Or just at any point if things change, if you have like a COVID form or a feedback form or anything like that, it can be just best to keep them up to date and things like that. Oh, so Sarah, you seem to be having an issue where patients are seeing something other than what is written in the acknowledgement email. Could you explain that a bit further for me?
Yeah, we've got 2 sites, and on one of them, patients are saying that when they're putting in the registering for online services form, they're being told to come down to the practice, but it's not what's written in that acknowledgement section there. So I thought maybe I was missing something and I couldn't get at it.
Oh, this is just a basic one. So this one does have it in, but if you've edited yours, it shouldn't be saying that. It might be a submission message that might need editing by your editor.
Okay.
So I'll change screen quickly and see if you guys can see that. Can you see the pretty green website? When you go to submit a form as well as a patient, so we'll just do a quick one. We'll just pop in my name. Test. Once you submit a form, we'll say it's correct, we do get this message here. So that might be what needs editing, Sarah. So if you go to your editor and let them know, well, one, you could ask them just to check it for you, because they can do that without submitting a form. And if it is showing a message that you don't want the patient to see, you can just ask them to quickly change it for you, and it shouldn't take too much.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing my screen now, and we will go back to the other questions in the chat.
So I've seen a question. So you've said when replying to patients, you close it and assume that it comes back to you when they reply. Are you doing it wrong? Should you be parking these? Theoretically, no, you don't have to park them, because even if you close something and the patient replies, it should come back into the new list. But I would recommend generally that you park it anyway, just so that, you know, anything that has yet to be finished, I wouldn't close generally, and that's what most practices do as well. So I would always put something like that in the parked list, but it should reset back to the new list regardless. But by closing it, it just means that if the patient doesn't ever come back to you, it's very easy to just forget about it. So if you do want to follow up on it later on, if you leave it in the parked list, you'll then be prompted to go back, and you can see that the patient hasn't responded. So then you might want to follow up on it after.
Yeah, sorry, I've never had any problems. I just assumed that they came back into my inbox, didn't realise they were going back through the through the triage thing again to be forwarded to me. So yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine.
I'll do
that's what we're here for.
Okay. Is there any other questions or anything that people would like to share or ask each other?
Sarah, I just checked your submission message for the Register for Online Services, and I can confirm what Nikita said. Actually, on the submission message, it's still saying that patients need to come into the practice. We can let your editor know to make sure that it reflects what you've got in the auto acknowledgement email.
I was just going to say, we've still got 10 minutes left of the session, so anyone who's got, this is an opportunity for anyone to share, again, like Nikita said, any of your best practices that you'd like to share with other practices, any ideas of how you can manage footfall efficiently, manage the dashboard, any questions that you've got, anything at all.
If there's any demos you'd like to see as well, let us know and we can quickly go through them with you. Anything at all. We are at your command for 10 minutes.
So a good one might be actually, we were talking about patient form control. If anyone wants us to show you that, we're happy to do that. So we can show you how to set up the schedules for forms.
Oh, so Denise has asked that they put e-consults on the dashboard as per GP request, so all in the same place for them. Is this the same for others, or do you have any other suggestions?
So we put e-consults on the dashboard as per GP request, so all in the same place. I think it varies. So does anyone else have any feedback on that at all? So does anyone do the same thing where you put all the e-consult requests on the dashboard? Or do you have any other way of doing it at all? So I think from our perspective, it is different for each practice. So I think they all do it slightly differently. I can't think of any off the top of my head that do it that way specifically, Denise, where they all do it. They put all e-consults on the dashboard. So I guess that would be an example of total triage. Where every request, regardless of where it comes in, even if it's from eConsult, they would pop it onto the dashboard using the patient forms like Nikita showed you. So you would just generate a new form in patient forms and then submit it through Footfall that way.
I'm also just getting the link so I can pop the patient form control video and the last webinar in the chat for you guys, as we promised earlier, in case you'd like to reflect on that. So the first link is the training video and the second link is our last webinar. That's really lovely feedback, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, so we'll just go through a quick recap of the topics that we've covered in the session today. So we have gone through how you can manage forms more efficiently, how you can use total triage, different methods of using it and what other practices do. We've looked at a case study of a practice that has successfully used total triage. We've looked at how the website can help with QOF targets. We've gone through some questions regarding different suggestions of how you can ensure that you don't get overwhelmed with forms. Again, how you can manage the number of requests coming in, how you can use patient form control, and different things like that. Just general management of requests coming into the dashboard within the practice. We've had a few questions about future release requests as well that we've gone through with Abby, and we've also gone through a couple of other things that have come up in the chat as well. So those are all the topics that we had come in as suggestions. So thank you everyone for submitting your feedback, and I hope that you found the session helpful. So if you do have any ideas of like future topics that we could make our next webinar on, feel free to let us know. So you can either send us a message in the chat now, or if you have attended one of these sessions before, let us know if you prefer this style of Q&A rather than the kind of more structured sessions, and we'll try to do more of those in the future.
Don't forget to keep an eye on our Facebook community page for announcements or future events. I will pop the link to the community page in the chat now as well. And if you need a recap on some of the content covered in today's session, the recording will be available on our YouTube channel. Otherwise, we will hang around for a couple more minutes in case you guys have any questions, but otherwise you are free to leave the session. Thank you so much for joining us today and for participating. It was really great to speak to you all.
Yep, thank you everyone. And I hope you have a good rest of the day. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.